Monday, June 22nd, Anthony, and we've got Andy Ingraham of NABUD here. I'm really looking forward to this great conversation.
It is wonderful to see you today, Glenn.
It is wonderful to see you too, and I hope everyone out there had a really good Father's Day. Let's get this show going. Hey, Anthony, I hope you had a great Father's Day weekend out there. You're looking pretty good, looking refreshed.
I am refreshed, and I'm bearded today. I think I'm going one day a week. I'm shaving. I don't know why, but I kind of like it. It's a little bit gray, but it's all right. I'm gonna leave it for a little while. I may be traveling this week, so I may have to shave it. But
you may be traveling this week,
and not Vegas. Remember that I told you there may be a hotel project I'm working on, and
yes,
with that human being that I told you about.
Yes,
and it may be happening.
All right, that's really good news. Well, I hope it really does happen. It's good to see things starting to pop here this week. I'm starting to get back more inquiries on future speaking engagements and stuff. I'm starting to see that more hotels are filling up, more people are coming back to work. It's feeling pretty good overall.
Yes, sir. It is. It's great, but unfortunately, we still got a problem, my brother. We can't deny that. There's still hotels, as someone just told us, being shut down, or restaurants being shut down in Florida. There's people not doing the right thing all across America, and for us to come back strong, we've all got to go the way the European Union's going. If you look at their scale, it's going down. Ours is going up. Not good for the travel industry, and that's just the way it is.
All right, I'll tell you someone who is good for the travel industry, Mr. Andy Ingraham, the CEO of NABUD. What do you think? What do you think? We should bring him on?
Andy's here.
Yeah, let's do it. Welcome to the show for the first time, Mr. Andy Ingraham, the CEO.
How are you, Glenn and Anthony?
Great to see you, sir. I love your positivity. I love your energy. You're one of my favorite people to hang out with at events and have a cocktail with. How's it going in your life today, sir?
It is, and I heard Anthony's comment. It is absolutely crazy. The industry is going through a rough time, and except down here in Miami, people just aren't getting it. They closed a couple of restaurants, but listen, I had a conversation with Chris Nacetta last week, and I'm positive that we're going to get through this. It's just awful. We worked on COVID. Now we have Black Lives Matter. So it's one item after the other, but we'll get through this together as a team.
Well, Andy, you got
I'm sorry. I just wanted to jump in real quick. The COVID, we have to deal with it. But the Black Lives Matter, we should have been dealing with that in a deeper way for many years. So it's not it's not these two matters, it's the one, and now we have to continue to focus on Black Lives Matter because we're just not paying attention as a country, and that's one of the reasons I love your organization. I want to know more about it. So, Glenn, why don't you tell everyone who Chris Nacetta is so everybody understands?
Well, of course, Chris Nacetta is the CEO of Hilton, and Andy Ingraham is the CEO of NABUD, otherwise known as the National Association of Black Owners, Operators, and Developers, an organization that's done a really great job at helping the African-American community in particular get to understand the great merits of hospitality ownership. Andy, I came to your events just one time, and I wish I'd been able to come back again and again. You typically hold them in July, which is difficult for me to get to, but I know you're doing your event this year in October, so I hope that we can finally do something again together at your event. But why don't you share a little bit about your organization in a more detailed way than I just have, sir?
Absolutely. First of all, Glenn, thank you, and thank Anthony for having me here. The National Association of Black Hotel Owners, Operators, and Developers came about as a result of lack of ownership, lack of diversity in the industry. Back in 2001, when we started, there was one branded hotel in this country. Today, there's just over 1,000 hotels owned by African American and people of color.
Right.
Obviously, our goal is to simply increase those numbers. One of the critical elements is when you look at the industry today, African Americans spend over $60 billion annually across the hospitality. There's simply a lack of diversity. That's one of the issues we've tackled since day one with ownership, We're going to look at executive level employment. We're going to look at minority supply diversity issue, and just to see how do we make this industry, which is, by the way, one of the greatest industries in the world, reflective of the way our country looks today.
So I remember back in the day, and I don't think they still do that, but the NAACP used to put out a report card, right, on the quality of diversity within an organization. And most hotel companies were receiving C's, D's, F's, that sort of thing. What is the status of diversity in hospitality industry today, be it at the major brands, the ownership and operating groups, the management companies, all of that stuff?
Well, Grant, I'll give you an example. I live in Fort Lauderdale, and if you look at Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and West Palm Beach metropolitan area, they can only find more than 1,000 hotels, yet there are only 5 Black general managers in those hotels. That's terrible. In addition, one company has 2. But when you look across the landscape, you find that there's a lack of diversity. There's a lack of diversity on boards. There's a lack of diversity in the executive suites. There's a lack of diversity in all executive positions. And today, that is a critical issue. When I say critical, Black Lives Matter brought to light an historical problem that continues to plague the African-American community. I have 2 sons, and I tell them the same thing every time they go out. Please be careful. If a police officer stops you, please do not do anything silly.
Jesus.
Actions. Now, why are we saying this? This is 2020. But I think we have a responsibility as leaders in the industry. How do we begin to change the paradigm? And the only way we can do that is something that we're working on with a number of major organizations, academia, Harvard University, Bethune-Cookman, Cornell, University of Rhode Island, University of Georgia. We are doing a top-down review of the industry, but more than that, we are going to provide some solutions on what can happen. Imagine if the hotel industry had the Rooney Rule. What is the Rooney Rule in the NFL? When it came about, it allowed Black coaches to get in. We're asking the hotel industry to adopt the Rooney Rule. It's very simple. For each executive position that you interview for, you should and must interview one African-American candidate. That does not say that you should give him. It just says that you should interview him. He should be considered. If we begin to develop a pool of qualified candidates, which are there, then obviously you'll see the changing of the industry. Now, nobody is under the illusion. It is an awful time. But I like what Chris Nassetta, the president of Hilton, said to me last week. They have furloughed or laid off a number of individuals, including the last round last week of 2,100 people. Chris has got to build a new company, which he's capable of doing, just as he did when he got the company and Blackstone acquired it. What we're saying to these hotel companies is include these diversity commitments as you rebuild the company. That way we can create the culture. If you have an executive, tie his bonus into his making his diversity goals. And these are 2 things that Chris Nassetta, as a leader in the industry, has adhered to. And imagine when we spoke with him, and by the way, I should tell you that a lot of the hotel companies have been supportive of the growth of African-American owners, diversity, but it's still not enough to change the industry. And we've got to make that change permanent and not wait for somebody to throw a stick at us. In terms of the NAACP, that report card is going to come out very soon. We're going to the NAACP to make sure it's germane to the industry and to make sure that we look at the right matrix so that nobody is just saying, you're guilty of this. We want solutions, not problems.
So, Anthony, sorry, go ahead, Anthony.
In 2001, you started, there was one Black-owned business or hotel, branded hotel. Now there's 1,000. What is the biggest barrier to entry? What do you feel? What things have gotten better and what things are the same or worse?
Biggest barrier to entry is access to capital. Number one issue for most people, and particularly for African Americans. The second thing is the brands have to put out a welcome map. Some of the brands have been extraordinary in looking at this business model and saying, gee, it makes sense. If my guest looks like folks that own the hotel, will it bring more business? When you look at what African Americans spend, it is absolutely silly not to look at how do we change ownership. Case in point, August 23rd, there's a Black Lives March in Washington, D.C. I checked our hotels last week that were Black owned. We've got so many requests from people all over the country to say, I want to stay at a Black owned hotel. And as of last week, there was only one Black owned hotel available in in Washington, D.C. It was the Marriott Marquis, and the rates were trading extraordinary high, but that's just for that one period. What I always tell folks that access to capital is an inhibiting factor, but there are some items that the brands can do, and some have done it to ensure that we get more ownership.
Which brands have you think have done a really, really good job?
Anthony, why are you going to put me on the spot? But it's
because you know why? And I thought about you, Andy. Let me answer that question, because I know you said in tongue in cheek, but the reason I want to is because one of the things on this show is one of the reasons it's been successful over the period of 4 months, and we're up to 750,000 individual clicks a month, is because we're not looking to hurt this industry. All we want to do is help this industry, and we need to know. We need to know which companies are doing well. If you're an African American and you want to work within that company, you want to own a hotel, this is a brand that maybe you want to look at.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. There's some brands like Hilton, Marriott, Wyndham, Hyatt, Choice in particular, have done extraordinary jobs. IHG has done an extraordinary job. But let me just say this. There's still a lot more to go and a lot more that can be done.
But I can't, if I can interrupt you, I can't get there with you. How can you say an extraordinary job has been done when there's only 1,000 people of color that own hotels? How is that possible?
That's my point. You hit it right on the head. There's a lot more to be done. There's a lot more that these brands, including the ones that work with us, there's some brands that don't even come to NABIT. There's some brands that don't support NABIT, but that's fine, because I think the public can make a decision whether you want to spend your money with friends or spend your money with people that don't respect you or your money. But when I say that, there's some companies that are prepared to listen, to say, what can we do to fix the problem? And you're right. Since we started in 2001, we've only been able to own, develop. Now, of course, in these times that we're going through, there are very few hotels being developed. But let me just say this. A lot of the cities in the urban core are controlled by Black elected officials. Our work with those cities and those urban core cities and those Black elected officials have been very critical, insisting that that hotel should have some minority interest and some minority participation, not just in the job at the lower level. All of us knows that we have been working in hotels of people of color from the beginning of time. We have just not been able to pierce the executive corporate suite. NABIT, in addition to ownership, in addition to supply diversity, in addition to executive level, we are talking to our partners and saying, you've got to do more. And today, some of them have made a commitment, some of them have not. And so I say to those that have not, it's time to get on board, because what Black Lives Matter did, it raised an ugly imagery of how awful this country is and how bad not only police brutality, but the lack of diversity.
So how do you stay, like you just said, companies are doing an amazing job, but there's still more to be done. How do you stay so measured, knowing that it's a big problem? You know, somebody said to me the other day, hotel business is one of the most diverse businesses in the world. I said, yeah, as long as you don't own one or you're in the C-suite or general manager, sure, it's very diverse, and there's a lot of minorities within our field. But I tell you, I've never worked for an owner of color. I've never had a general manager of color. So it's it says a lot about you, because I think it would be a lot more. You seem impatient, but you seem to be that it's going in the right direction, which I appreciate. But I'd like to see general managers. My thing, not so much owners, because I'm not really in that field. I'm basically more dealing with owners and consulting with general managers, and I've been general manager for 30 years. So that's kind of what I focus on, and I just don't see it. Glenn, did you want to ask a question?
We're getting questions about specifically what can be done. You already talked about perhaps having that request that one African American or person of color is interviewed for each executive job. But what else might be able to be done? Perhaps, and maybe you're already doing this, perhaps you have access to all of these candidates, and some of the major hotel companies and management companies might be better to partner with you to help you work as almost a de facto executive to help them find the right candidates that have a higher likelihood of getting those positions to help them get into the C-suite, which will then hopefully create a virtuous circle of opening the door to get more people of color into those important roles. So what do you think about that? Are you doing something like that? What other things could possibly be done to shine a light on great candidates, which a lot of us might not even know are out there right now?
So, Glenn, I know I sent you a copy of our report, our white paper.
I haven't received it yet, which is why.
No, you haven't. Okay. I was just about to say you must have read some of our literature. The answer is very critically, yes, we are doing that. We are pooling together with academia to create HR companies, to create pool of qualified African Americans that hotel companies can no longer say, or management companies, or supply diversity companies, or finance companies can no longer say we can't find a candidate. Warren Fields, one of our board members, said something to me last week. We need to go back to the universities like Cornell and University of Rhode Island and Cookman and Howard University and said, let's track these candidates. Right. Mm-hmm. Because all too often you hear two things. I can't find a good qualified African American. Well, that's kind of crazy. And if you can't do that, we can help you. We have decided, and we've done this before, where we pool all these resumes. We brought in companies, HR experts. One of the individuals on the advisory committee that's working on the report is Sean Rogers, who's an HR expert. Dr. Sean Rogers, who just left Cornell and is now at the University of Rhode Island. And Michael Paz at Cornell, which is an expert in cultural diversity. So we looked for folks to help us provide these solutions. Anthony and Glenn, you said something earlier. I want to be measured because it's critical for us to have the great partnership. I mean, you think about it. Hospitality is one of the greatest industry in the world, second only to healthcare in the United States. It has a lot of potential. And what you see with COVID, when the hospitality industry went down, the whole country went down. People weren't traveling, hotels were closed, people were laid off. I think it's incumbent upon us in this industry not only to do the right thing, but to make sure that our businesses do well by being inclusive. You know, shame to those hotel companies and those management companies that say they can't find. Right. But when Anthony said, why am I so measured? I'm measured because when I have discussions with people like Bill Fortier from Hilton or Kristen Seta, when I have discussions with people like Leslie Hale at RLJ or Warren Thompson or Warren Fields, and when I have conversations with a number of different brands, what I say to them, once you make a commitment at the top, then the person who runs global diversity will have something that he can deal with. All too often we get these jobs where they put African Americans in positions and they have no authority except to say how good we can do, but do little to change the paradigm. And that's what we want to work on this time.
So I'm going to ask you a little bit of a difficult question, but I really want to know the answer to this. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that most of the companies, most of the brands, and most people you're dealing with are giving you the respect that you deserve and really listening? And when you run into a person that basically, when you leave their office, they check a box saying, "Okay, I spoke to that guy. Let's move on." How do you handle that?
I thought you was going to give me a difficult question. That's not difficult at all. As a matter of fact, the proof is in the pudding.
And is it true? Does that happen? Do you feel that way?
It does happen, and it's obvious. And I can tell you why it's so obvious, because if there was a real commitment, you and I and Glenn would not be sitting here about a problem. And if it was a real commitment, then when you look and find GMs, there will be, just as you find women, just as you find other white men throughout the industry. And a little anecdote. I sit on the board of Alice, the advisory board. And I can remember in those meetings when the issue was raised, we don't have enough women attending Alice. And I raised the question, we don't have enough African Americans attending Alice. And I can remember very vividly the response we got and some of the comments. And I applaud Jim Berber for his vision, but Jim Berber said something interesting. Jim Berber said, we don't invite people who should come. Our sponsors and our brands do that. If the brands send more women and thus more African Americans, then we'll have more attendees. Well, 3 years later, the amount of women went up by 22%. The amount of African Americans didn't even change the needle. So I think, to your point, when we go in and have these discussions and folks give you the lip service, that has been standard. And when I say I'm encouraged, some of the brands have helped us to move the needle.
Right. And that's when a person in a position like that has got to have some measurement to move the needle. And I think that again, I don't want to talk bad about somebody I don't know or say something I'm not really educated on, but we need to do more. And I think, like we're being Glenn spoken about in general, we just need to do more. We need to dig deeper. We need to pay attention. And it's easy to, like you said, to give lip service. And and I've been in plenty of meetings when, people, whether it be trying to get financing or whatever, and give me lip service, and you feel it, and you know it. And, and it's, but I've never walked into a room. Listen, it's hard to find capital I've had
anybody
find capital, but I've never walked into a meeting and walked out not getting capital saying, well, the reason I didn't get capital is because of the color of my skin. And that's what I think people in my position and other positions got to really understand. And I really don't think they do.
And I agree with you, and we partnered with the National Coalition of Black Media Professionals. Anthony and Glenn, over the last couple of weeks, I mentioned during COVID, we worked very well with AHOA, American Hotel and Lodging, because the whole industry was in a problem. We wanted PP to be proactive. We wanted elected officials from the Congressional Black Caucus to the senators on both sides of the aisle to understand the plight of our industry.
Right.
I should say people like Congressman Meeks, Senator Mark Rubio, Congressman Elsie Hastings, and the whole Congressional Black Caucus clearly understood. The one question they always ask us is, how are you being treated in this industry? Because we don't see enough folks that look like you. And so when we see these folks come to our door, and Congressman Elsie Hastings is very good at it. They come, but most of the time they're no people of color. Well, that's silly in business. The second thing is that over the last 2 weeks, I've had about 15 heads of organizations, from the National Black McDonald owners to the National Black Bankers, on the phone saying the same thing. What can we do as an industry?
Right.
What can we do as individuals? Who can we partner with to make sure that we're inclusive, because we do not want to destroy an industry that has so much potential.
So, Andy, let's get into some specifics. We have a question here from Joachima Hiller. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I'm having a little trouble seeing it. I have been a hotel general manager and 30 years of experience and a terminable degree. I have no access to capital and never will, but I'm ready for ownership. I've not found a managing partner arrangement in hotel ownership as in the restaurant segment. Can this be a lifeline for our aspiring Black hotel owners? So this is a classic problem, Andy. Someone who has skills, someone who has experience, somebody who has that desire, but has been cut off from participating like other folks have been.
I'll just, before you answer that, Andy, I will tell you, she is a fan of mine. I am a fan of hers. I believe she actually wrote a book. And she loves this industry as much as anyone. And if there's anybody I've ever come in, white or black, anybody I've ever come in contact with in my industry, I want to help. Get her a hotel. Let's go. She is an inspiration to me.
Perfect. No, Glenn, she, like most African Americans, all have a dream, as we do, to get into hotel business. I talk about access capital, but you and I know that there's something called sweat equity. And what we've done at NABHOOD is that we know that no one individual, except for people like Bob Johnson, at White Lodge, and at $1.2 billion. But most of our owners have gotten together. They've brought in some sweat equity partners. They pooled their resources. Our typical ownership model typically would show 3 or 4 people pooling their resources together, getting some incentives from the brand. And I should say this, we do about 3 or 4 workshops a year at Marriott and with Hilton, where we bring people in to talk about how you can get into the ownership. And part of that is to make sure that we can get some equity credit. We can get some help from the brands. We can bring sweat equity to the table. So to her question, yes, the doors are open where we can find partnerships that need to have that black general manager. And we have one of the early stories that Mike Levin did when he was over at IHG.
And again, Mike Levin is the individual who helped start the Asian American Hotel Owners Association, as a real icon in our business. Please continue, sir.
And Mike Levin has always been an innovator. Back in Georgia, we pieced together a deal at a microtel. We took a barber, we took an insurance salesman, we took an attorney, and we took a business people, and created and developed the first microtel hotel in Lithonia, Georgia. Mike wanted to show that this industry, from an ownership standpoint, is not out of reach. Now, you're not going to be able to do that probably with a Four Seasons or some of the most large and expensive hotels, even though there are public-private partnerships where it has opened the door for African Americans. But to her point, the answer is yes. Sweat equity.
If I can interrupt you real quick, let's get back to Four Seasons. Are you saying that because these buildings, Four Seasons and those kind of hotels, are just very hard to get that kind of capital behind you to open it up, not because Four Seasons doesn't want people of color owning their hotels?
Absolutely. The capital, the benchmark for capital go way high as you get up in those types of hotels. Brian Parker at Choice Hotels, who heads the emerging market, and I, many years, coined the phrase, the sweet spot. What was the sweet spot a couple of years ago? How do I build or buy a hotel for under $5 million? How do I buy or build a hotel for under $3 million, some part thereof? Now, think about it on round numbers. You're looking for about 30% of equity to get into most of these deals. And for that, sometimes 3, 4 people. And during the good times, equity was very, very easy prior to 2008.
Right.
But as you and I know, that if you over leverage and there's an issue like today, you're going to be in deep water. So,
and we're probably in better shape today than we were in 2008 because people aren't as over leveraged. And I want to bring me a deal. I only need 30% equity. I want that deal.
All right, listen, that's aggressive prior to the virus, but you're right. That doesn't happen now, and you're going to see a lot of hotels, even though we're not as over leveraged. You're going to see a lot of hotels and hotel companies running into issues.
Right. So let's ask this question from
she can become a hotel owner, and we'd love to see people like her become hotel owners.
So here's
so you guys connect. If you guys can connect, that'd be great. So at the end, we'll give the information where she can connect with you, and you can build that bridge. That'd be great. What was that comment there?
All right. So Garland says financing capital is based on the ability to repay regardless of the color of your skin, right? So what programs can you put in place to change that? What organizations out there are doing something different? I think this really gets to the whole point of, you say that people need capital, but a lot of folks, especially in Black communities, may not have that capital to begin with because of potentially a cycle of poverty and stuff like that. How can people get a leg up and be able to compete with folks that have been born on second or third base?
I can't wait to hear Andy's answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like this really gets to the heart of everything. And I feel like everyone's been going around and around in circles on this, and it always comes to this particular issue.
Well, what's interesting? Sometimes when you walk into the table, sometimes if there's not an open mind to even begin to have that discussion. And I can always point, as you know, Glenn, to Evans Charles. And you think of Evans Charles.
Who was on our show just a couple of weeks ago and is going to be
I know.
And he just so you know, he beat me. He won the poker tournament. I cheated. So he still won, just so you know.
Well, Evans Charles is a good poker player. I'm sure if he beat you. Is that think about Evans Charles, a young kid whose mother came here as an immigrant, didn't grow up in a silver spoon, grew up in the wrong side of town, got a great solid education, started making money at a job, went to Temple University, and then decided to partner and came to our first meeting. Read a book by Donahue Peoples about the first Black-owned hotel in Miami Beach. And when you go back to that first hotel, it's the same thing that happened. What happened in Miami? So you're right. Capital doesn't look at color.
Right.
Capital looks to decide whether they'll give it to a person, not repayment. Because very few of us that are people of color, and we understand how to repay our debt. But in Miami, why did we have the first Black-owned hotel in Miami? Why? The same thing as the George Floyd case. The McDuffie riots and part of the settlement that a great legal mind, both legal minds, H.T. Smith and Marilyn Holyfield did, as part of the settlement to that boycott, they put a scholarship fund for $1 million that went to FIU to help educate Black kids because we don't have enough in the industry, and a $10 million loan or grant. We're still not sure what Miami Beach did or what happened, was given to a group who can build a hotel in Miami Beach. Every time we have a disaster, there's an overreaction. And after that, it goes away. I'm thrilled to see, thrilled is the wrong word. I'm encouraged to see the sort of commitment that we and folks around the country who understand what happened to George Floyd is symptomatic of the issues we have in industries across the country. So repayment, you're right, is not a matter of color. If the deal is structured right, and if that deal pencils in by the banks, by the hotel companies, by the investors, then they're going to be repaid.
Yeah, but then a guy like Evans, who's just a superstar guy, regardless of color, he's just a great guy, goes in to get a loan for a hotel after he's shown success. And because another gentleman of color wasn't successful, that bank looked at him and said, hey, we had one African-American, didn't work out so well, so good luck and God bless you. Now, they didn't say those exact words to him, but basically that's what they said. And that's what's insane. That is, like when you just said you changed the word from excited to encouraged, because excited is the wrong word, because why would we be excited that we're going to treat people fairly? It's insane.
I agree with you, and that's unfortunate. It happens every day. We live it, we understand it, and we get all the reasons why we can do business. But there are other code words that they use. They don't return your phone calls. They don't support you. They don't show up. They don't invite you to the meeting. You'll only get invited to the meeting, and God bless a lot of these Black elected officials and a lot of white elected officials. When they say, I want to make a difference, please come back with somebody that looks like my community to be part of the deal. Then you see folks running out to try to create those partnerships. And that's unfortunate, but that's something we've got to change.
And that's true, not only in the hotel business, but across business, period.
Andy, I see companies out there. Apple just announced a $100 million program today. I'm feeling maybe this time is different, or maybe I'm just naive. What do you see right now? Is the movement that we're seeing right now, taking to the streets every single day for the last few weeks, really going to make systemic change that we all need? Or is it just more of another version of what we've seen time and time and time again?
I think it's going to make some systemic changes, period. But what I'm also leery of is that major corporations who, for the moment, let's throw some money, let's throw some lip service, and make no real changes. I think changes are very critical. The real changes are part of building a commitment to diversity within the fabric of your organization. I mean, think about it for most of us. You don't only see black people on the street. You see young white kids. You see old white people. You see Muslims. You see Indians. You see Chinese.
Right.
You see across the world. So obviously, there's been a consciousness raising of the wrong that has been done and how do we create a better society. And I think if Apple, if Marriott, if all these firms are interested, then we can all do better. We at the National Association of Black Hotel Owners and our partners, the National Coalition of Black Meeting Planners, we understand this because we live every day. We look for partners to work with. And so are we encouraged? No question. Are we disappointed and it's taken so long,
right,
and the loss of so many lives? Why is it that we continue to pay the price, and when somebody gets hurt, die, who's somebody's father, son, brother, a member of our society, then we react? What I hope that we can do, along with the Urban League, along with the NAACP, along with the National Coalition of Black Meeting Planners, along with the Black Chamber, how do we craft a working relationship with those organizations that has historically been off limits for Blacks and create a opportunity of us all working together? You're right. I like to be optimistic. I like to think there's hope. And I like to think that I work in one of the greatest industries in the world. It just needs a lot of tweaking and a lot of work.
In 2001, if you had a crystal ball, do you think we're in better shape or worse shape in the hospitality industry, specifically with Black owners?
Worse shape. I thought we'll be much better along in terms of ownership. I thought most hotel companies would embrace us. I find that the only time we get a lot of calls sometimes, and I related one story and I can use Fort Lauderdale, but a major organization was bringing a conference to Fort Lauderdale, and they did a site inspection and they saw some great hotels. And in one hotel, a major hotel, when that major organization team walked through, they asked, well, where are the Black people? They saw no Black people. And they asked that question to their host, the city. And as a result of that effort, the city then established a Black hospitality committee to address some of the inadequacies. Now, that's a long time ago. Today, we look at many of these cities, and I referenced Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and I live in Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach. Why is it today that with the growth of our industry, there's still only 5 Black general managers? CVBs, Convention and Visitors Bureau, who promotes these cities. There's more than 400 to 500 CVBs in the United States, yet less than a dozen people of color at the helm. Why is that? Financial companies, those that do business with us, why is it that you can hardly find Black executives? Why is it that people like Isaiah, that has a champagne, that he's been trying to get into the hotel business for years,
right?
Why? And he's an NBA player, a star, and he's having a problem getting his product into a hotel. Is it racism? I don't know. Tell me.
That's a tough part. All right. Last question for you, Andy, before we let you go. What can Anthony and I do better to help and make sure that we don't drop the ball and don't give anybody lip service?
Glenn, you've always been a dear friend. Anthony is going to be a great friend to us and to me personally. What you guys are doing today speaks volume of the commitment that you have. And I can see the sort of empathy that Anthony is displaying, because a lot of this is new to a lot of people. And a lot of us struggle is how do we make and how do we move to change? So what we can do is programs like this. What we can do is speaking to other people about what it is that we can do. An Indian executive at AHOA said to me a couple of weeks ago, he said, Andy, I was coming home with my 2 boys, college-age kids, from their grandparents. Their grandparents had given them some money, and he asked them, each one, what are you going to do with the money? Mm-hmm. One said, I was going to buy clothing for school. The next son, the younger one, said, I'm going to give it to Black Lives Matter. It was shocking looking for that executive of a HOA. Him and his wife had a discussion, and as most of us that don't understand why young people are concerned about this country, had a whole change of mind and an appreciation for how important this change is. So what you and Andy can do is just doing more programs like this, getting people to ask the question, what can we do to make a difference? And that's critical, because part of what we're going to do with this study, we're going to put it in the public domain. Anybody can look and see, here's how Wyndham is doing. Here's what is doing. Here's what Hilton is doing. And when you have leaders like said, who's prepared to come out, we would hope that there would be other leaders in the industry that can follow his lead and do the same thing, i.e. getting folks on their board, i.e. making a commitment to bonus and diversity, i.e. making sure that minority vendors and supplier diversity don't have to jump through 100 steps. Or when you have companies like Avendra who partner with us, who may do $14 billion a year, why is it to these companies, their commitment and spend with African American and other diverse groups are so low? So just making and highlighting some of the inadequacies is enough, and getting people online to say publicly, I support it, and here's what we can do.
Excellent. Well, I'll tell you, I thought this has been a great conversation today, and we didn't get to the survey that you were talking about today. I hadn't received it in the email, but I think this is a perfect excuse to get you back on here in a couple of weeks, and let's have that conversation about that, and let's just keep this conversation going, moving it forward. And I encourage everybody out there that's paying attention, let us know other things that we can help to make this meaningful, to actually enact change, so we don't have to talk about it anymore. I'm tired of talking. I'm seeing you've been talking about it for 20 years. Andy, let's get this done.
You know what? I think
Andy's growing a great. Andy's growing a great. And it's always great. Used to be black.
Listen, I'm going to go further. And Glenn, we haven't talked about this, but it's like we have Chris Green coming back, once or twice a week. Andy, we should have a spot here for you at least once a week, if you can fit in your schedule. And we should be talking about these issues every week. We should be discussing how we can do better. We should have general managers color on. We should have that young lady that mentioned in the comment, how can I be an owner? Have her on. And that's how we do better. That's how, listen, being a general manager is effing hard. I work my ass off, but I also saw people of color work their ass off and not get the promotion. I've seen racism firsthand in hotels. I've seen it. Okay. And I've done everything I can to ensure, and I won't go into specifics, to ensure that I made changes where I was. So let's make a commitment. We're saying, how can we change? Let's have Andy on as a regular guest.
All right.
I'm honored. I would be much appreciative. And Anthony, the other thing that you got to do is spend more time in the Bahamas, down in Albuquerque, Luther, where I'm from, so you can have a good time and recharge the battery every so often.
I've been to the Bahamas many, many times, and I would love to go. Matter of fact, my daughter and I were going to go down there right before this all happened, and unfortunately, this is what happened. But I have a daughter who's almost 18 and twins that are 20, and we're all living for 4 months in the same house, so we're all ready for a vacation. We may not be taking it together, though.
Understandable. Thank you all for having me, and good luck. And Glenn, I'm in with Anthony. I'm in.
Beautiful. All right.
Thank you, Andy.
We'll have our people reach out to your people. We'll make sure all of that happens. Andy, you are such a delight. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
My pleasure. Enjoy.
Take care. All right. That was great. I love Andy, and I've known him for a really long time. And it's good to see that people out there seem to be wanting to make more of a commitment right now. So how about we get right into our next guest? What do you think about that?
We have another guest, my friend?
Yeah, we always do. We're trying not to have so many guests, but we can't help it. There's so many amazing people.
I thought we talked about one guest today, but let's have two today.
We did, but I can't seem to make that work. Hold on. All right. Hans, we kept you waiting for so long. Hans Vander Reijden, is that how you pronounce your last name?
Very good, actually. Yes. I'm very impressed. Yes.
Excellent. I got to tell you, I gotta end the show right now because it's just going to get worse from here. Hans, thank you so much.
Funny, Hans, you made a mistake that I've made many, many times. Exactly the wrong time you started taking a drink of water.
I know,
Right.
So Hans runs Ithaka Hospitality, and Anthony, the reason why you're going to like this is he was the number 6 employee with Capella from our friend Horst Schultze. So I thought you guys would really hit it off, which is why I wanted to have him.
Wow, the 6th employee. So welcome to the show, and
Thank you very much for having me.
guest. So give me and then we'll talk about your company. But tell me in 2 minutes or less why working for Horst Schultze was an experience, good or bad.
Oh, amazing! But before we start, let me tell you one thing. I want to echo what Andy just said. I think you guys did something really important today, and that is what we all need to do, which is discuss the topic at hand. And what you guys are doing, using your platform to make this a topic that people can't leave in their car when they come to work and pick it back up when they leave. We have to, in our workplaces, be able to discuss this. And the more you use your platform, it allows us an opportunity to have these real conversations and simply listen. It's an important journey that we're all on right now, and I appreciate you guys for making it discussable today.
Yeah, and what I want to do, and that's why I would like Andy on at least once a week, if he can make it, if not once every 2 weeks, is because we got to do it. It's like we have Chris Green on, and I love Chris, but let's talk, and we don't have to have Andy on just to talk about this topic. We can have him on and tell us about other topics that are important to him, important to people of color. And, let's have the conversation going. Let's make a real commitment.
Exactly.
Because, listen, as somebody that has had hospitality has been insane to me. It's been so good to me. And I've worked really, really hard for what I have, but I have not been discriminated against. So why should somebody have to work doubly as hard and not get the position after they work doubly as hard? I've seen it. I've literally seen it. So, we're ready to commit in a really big way.
Fantastic. Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about working with Horst Schultze.
With Horst?
The first in at Capella, and then we're going to talk about your company, Ithaka Hospitality Partners.
Absolutely. Well, I worked for Horst for 26 years.
Wow.
Between Ritz-Carlton and Capella, and he now serves. I'm very blessed. He serves as an advisor to Ithaka. He has been instrumental to what we do and who we are philosophically. But when I came to this country, I'm from Holland, from the Netherlands. I couldn't get into the country. I couldn't get a visa, and I was determined to get into the hotel business into the United States. Worked on a cruise line for 3 years, Holland America Line. Go figure, makes sense, right? And then I spent the time in between contracts on the ships to go ashore, meet people that I met on the ship, and go into hotels and just talk to the employees in the hotels to figure out who I wanted to work for. And it was a significant difference between Ritz-Carlton and any other hotel company. This is early 90s. And I found the sense of pride that people had in being connected to that culture, to that company, was so insanely high that I was like, I don't care where you put me. I don't care what you had for breakfast. I just want something, right? Get me in. And I had an opportunity to join the company, moved around for years. Spent 4 years in Asia, in Bali. And then I got the call, we're starting over, pack your bags, you're going to be part of it. And that's cool. When Horst, tells you that you're joining and you're starting a new luxury hotel company, you jump, go.
You started that luxury hotel company, but you put all the pieces into place, and then you guys were crazy and you sold it in 2017. Yes. Great time to sell a brand, but now you're at it once again with Ithaka Hospitality Partners. So
correct.
Why are you starting again? Why not just ride off into the sunset? What's the motivation behind this? Or I guess it's because now it's yours, right?
Yeah, and it's the industry is evolving so quickly. I think we have an amazing opportunity to be in the really fiercely independent sphere and non-branded hotels. We are both on university campuses in terms of university-owned properties. That's really what we're after. Mm-hmm. And hospitality education. We're partners with Auburn University and an amazing hospitality program. We laid out the vision together with the university and the hospitality program for $115 million culinary and hospitality science center. That's none of it. This doesn't exist yet anywhere in the world, and it's under construction right now. It's unbelievable. And we are engaged in a luxury project, and we have a couple of other opportunities. But we just launched, and of course, last year was a great year to work on development. This year, not so much. But
no, is there anything going on that we should know about?
Right. But I do think that for hotels that are going to open in about 2.5, 3 years from now, especially in luxury, especially in the more remote locations,
right.
That there's a massive opportunity there.
So I don't think there's a secret that the luxury market's been hit the hardest during COVID. So how do you convince owners to invest in luxury property, and what does a luxury property have to do differently now that they didn't have to do pre-COVID, outside of all the standards that everybody else has to do?
Well, absolutely. I think that there's a couple of things that come to mind. And I think that what we already see is that remote locations with more independent, whether it's villas or cabins, whatever it is, the programming of a resort is going to change. I think that, obviously we all know that the larger conference convention hotels are unfortunately the last ones to come back. But people are anxious to travel, and they will be more cautious. Even if we do find a vaccine, we don't know if this thing is going to come back in a mutated form next year or the year after.
Right.
I think people are going to be very specifically looking at how can I book something that allows me to have space, that allows me to have distance. And so I think those who have those independent villas or the lake or somewhere near the beach is the way to go.
Right. Anthony, were you going to say something?
I was, and it went
here.
It went here to, and then it left.
All right. So kind of like Hans's internet connection. It's going well, and then it suddenly ceases working there for
no.
No, it's all right, Hans. All right. So that's really interesting to me. I want to go back to this hospitality management type of thing in regards to having an on-university type of a program. That's exciting to me because it sounds like you're really creating a real working laboratory for people to learn the art of hospitality, right?
Correct. When Horst started Capella, he didn't imagine he was going to start a ultra luxury hotel company in Auburn, Alabama. That was not really on the plans.
Right.
But he had served on the advisory board for that same program since the inception of Ritz-Carlton in '83, and always gave the dean and the administration the same advice, which was, you cannot learn hospitality from a textbook. You need to add a practical application to it. You need to get your hands dirty. You got to be in the dishwasher. You got to be folding laundry. You got to be making beds. You got to serve food, and otherwise your education is not complete. And so at that time, when he started Capella, the university acquired a hotel that's on the edge of campus in the heart of the city, and it was most probably not the greatest of hotel assets, to say it mildly. But his vision was way ahead and said, listen, I've made a commitment to helping this program. We're going to fix up this hotel. The university is committed to doing so. We're going to give them the vision for it. And we're going to commit ourselves to this. And it became the philosophical heart of our company. Every single GM in the world in Capella Hotels came to Auburn for their full day or a couple of days, actually, orientation. And the corporate office was in Atlanta, so it was very convenient, close by. But to be so involved in the hospitality program from the ground up, you see what is happening in our industry. You see where it's moving. You see how the clientele is changing based on what you observe from the graduating seniors. But you can also see where the employee base is moving.
Right.
And so you're really at the foundation of it, at the base of it.
That is really super cool. I got another question for you, Hans. You're a Dutch guy, so obviously you're from Holland, the Netherlands. I just read over the weekend that they're rethinking about how they're going to deal with tourism, in particular in a place such as Amsterdam, which has been burdened by over tourism for so many years. And they're thinking about capping it at 14 million, and they had over 19 million. Plus, they're looking at getting rid of some of the amenities that the city has that attract people to it. What do you think about that in terms of that specifically? And then philosophically, for rethinking about how we even approach tourism globally?
Yeah, since I'm from there, I've seen it grow over the
that's
years.
why you're the perfect person to ask, right?
But how can you possibly put a limit to it? I think that what you need to do is promote other cities. There's so many gems of cities in Holland. And I think that's the responsibility of the tourism organization, the tourism board, National Tourism Board, to really put the highlight elsewhere. And people are still going to fly into Amsterdam. How can you stop them from staying in the city? Maybe a moratorium on hotels, but they run before COVID, they ran about a 90% occupancy.
Right.
And so, how do you stop it? I don't know how you can physically do it. There was talk about possibly closing down hotels when you've reached that limit. Well, that destroys enterprise. That destroys your way of business.
I was there 2 years ago. We did a show, and I actually brought my daughter with me, and it was apparently at the peak, and it felt like a busy Friday night off peak in Times Square. It didn't feel like Christmas in Times Square. It felt like a busy night in Times Square on a Friday. Like now, if it gets every night where like Christmas in Times Square, that's a problem. And I will just tell you that me and my daughter went into a bakery, and I wanted some cupcakes, and the young lady said there's wheat in them, and I was like, I can eat wheat. And my daughter turned to me, she goes, "Dad, weed." I was like, "Oh, okay." But you didn't see it. I didn't like smell pot. I didn't see like with the young ladies. I didn't see any of that. It looked like I was happy and it was fine.
I love that city.
Listen, whether you're Times Square, wherever you are, if you're looking for that stuff, you're going to find that stuff. I think it's insane, and I think it's one of the most, probably my favorite place on earth.
Well, I join you with that. I mean, it's a phenomenal place. I love going back. My family is still there, and Amsterdam is always part of the itinerary. When I go with my family, it's like I got to walk those streets. I got to be on that water. It's one of the greatest cities on earth, and the best way to see the city is really from the water. Get an open boat, not one of those big glass tubs, and go for a couple of hours on the water. Bring some champagne and enjoy it. You're floating through the golden era of a country, the 1600s. It's amazing. There's bars there that have never closed and have been open since 1605.
Wow. What's really important to me is seeing leaders in this industry and people like Hans, people like yourself. Tell me actually, it's a two-part question. Tell me one thing that you learned from Hans that you live every day, and then tell me one time you made him pissed off and why.
Well, they're kind of both the same thing. It's Horst has an amazing capacity to come to your hotel. And you know what it's like. I mean, Anthony, you remember those days. I mean, corporate would come down, right? And he said it in his podcast. It's like, it's the seagull syndrome, right? They fly in, you know what happens next, and they fly off. and it's always a negative connotation. Corporate is coming. And when you work in an organization, and I know some friends of mine, they try to take the day off when they know corporate is coming to town. And I think that's so ridiculous. What I love about Horst coming to town is that you were always ready to be told, where you could improve. And he told me once, he says, I know this pisses you off, but it doesn't help you if all I do is pat you on the back, tell you what a great guy you are, what a wonderful hotel you're running, then I don't do you any favors. But the great thing is he's one of the very few in the industry that can tell you that, and you feel like you personally failed him. You just want to run through a wall and fix it and get energized.
Yep. So, right. What is the essence that makes a leader somebody that you don't want to disappoint personally, as opposed to just feeling like maybe they think you're doing a bad job?
Two things, vision and care. If you have a great vision that people buy into and are committed to, you're going to have an army of people following you, and the direction has to be clear. You got to be committed to it, and it will happen. But at the same time, you can have all the vision in the world. If you're not a deeply caring individual that builds relationships with your leadership team, with your employees, it's not going to go anywhere. You need to be able to connect at a deeper level with people than simply giving direction. Nobody gets motivated by that.
And it's not about likability. You don't have to like the person. If you have a vision and they're deeply connected to that vision and to their team, You may or may not want to bring that person out for a drink. You may or may not be friends with that person. That's where people get confused. Okay. Mm-hmm. I have been around a lot of people that haven't had vision that I love, and I don't, and I want to go have a drink with them, but I really don't want to work with them. And then I've had people that have had a vision that are deeply connected to me and my team that his personality or her personality is just a little too, it's not my personality. And that's where people, I think leaders make a mistake. They want to be liked, you know? Yeah. And Hans, I just in the little conversations that we had, to me, he is so deeply rooted in building a vision and building a team that whether you like him or not, like doesn't even pop on his radar. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm too busy building this team and this vision. Like I'm not going to be disrespectful and I'm not going to be somebody that is going to be mean. But if you don't like me, okay, what are we talking about? You talk about liking me? What did that basketball player say? You talk about practice? You talk about liking me? That has nothing to do with the business. If I treat you well and I give you a vision and we work as a team and everyone's treated with respect, whether you like me or don't like me, it doesn't really keep me up at night. That's just personally.
Well, and there's a couple of people in our industry that are like that. You know, you think about Ed Mady, you think about Ed Staros, you think about Herman Elger, Brian Gulbrandts. I mean, you all know these guys, right? They have such a loyalty build up with their teams. They will move anywhere they go. You know, it's one phone call.
Wow.
And it's a plus when you have that ability to connect and people like you, not because you're compromising to make them like you, but because it's genuine.
Right, but there's two. But again, I'm going to be on two sides here. Is you can do both. You don't like you can be liked and you can have a vision. But there's plenty of people I look up in this industry that's not my favorite person to listen to or not my favorite person to see on an interview. But I would follow them anywhere because it's like when you're on that team, they care about one person. They don't care about the color of your skin. They don't care if you're male or female. What they care about is we need to take that hill and we're going to take it together. You know, again, back to my military training. You know, you don't care who's on the side of you as long as we're all going in the same direction. And I worked for a gentleman named Colonel Hallam's, who's since passed away, and he's one of the greatest leaders I've ever worked for in my life. He wasn't the most liked person you ever wanted to meet. I loved him, but a lot of people respected him and worked for him, but he wasn't, he wasn't warm and fuzzy. You ever see Colonel Jessup in Few Good Men?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
That was Colonel Hallam's.
One of my favorite movies. Exactly. But, if you think about our company, right, we Ithaka Hospitality Partners, we have an amazing group of advisors. We're a young company. We just got started. I can't pay these people. But I was able to call on them and said, listen, I want your advice. I need your counsel. I need your mentorship. And it's a long list. You got Scott Rahm, you got Horst, you got Gerard van Grinsven. I mean, you got a long list of people.
Is Jerry on your list? Is Jerry Anzarello on your list?
No, because I don't know him that well.
Oh, he is an insane human being.
Yes. But it's amazing to be able to tap into these people and get advice when you need it. And we all do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I love this business is because when you'll never understand it. And one of the things that, as much as I love Glenn and he knows the business better than I do in some instances, he really does. He'll never understand what it's like to open a brand new hotel. And there's no
I like it.
It's truly like the birth of a child. I mean that.
Right.
Yes. But there's there's such a spirit, right, in hotels that open. And that was our vision always. Open a hotel at like 125% spirit. Because what's going to happen after opening, it's not that busy yet. We're going to make some mistakes. We're going to screw up a couple of times. And you're going to land at about 105, 110. You mess up a few more times. It's at 100% spirit. Imagine if you only open at 100. Now suddenly you're at 70. So coming out of the gate, forget it. You're never going to win it. You're never going to win.
I always tell when we open up a hotel, I always talk to everybody about stamina. I say, I don't care how you come out of the gate. Right? I care how you come out of the gate when we celebrate the year anniversary, the 10-year anniversary. And that's the difference between excitement and a vision.
Yeah.
I can get everybody excited for a week. I can get everybody excited for a month. I can't get people excited for years if there's not a vision. Because at the end of the day, when I'm in the room, it just gets old. They're listening to the same stuff. They're like, oh, here he goes again. Oh, here he goes again. If you're building a vision, and one of the things I've learned early in my career is people love competition. People love to say, we are going to beat our competition. We can love them and go out to drinks with them, But when we're working, we're going to destroy them, and they're going to wish they never knew my name.
That's right.
We can do it in a fair way. And so that's a vision. That is an excitement. And I think people get mixed that up. I try to have my stamina, 24/7 when I'm running hotels, because it's a hard freaking business.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story, right? Two of my advisors, Scott Rahm and Gerard van Grinsven. So during the Ritz-Carlton days, Gerard was the vice president of food and beverage, and we were flying high. I mean, that food and beverage division company-wide was unbelievable. And there was the room side, right? And that was Scott Rahm. He was the new vice president rooms. And we were opening the Ritz-Carlton in Istanbul. And, we were in separate ballrooms doing our closing lineups. And the one would say, the food and beverage guy, Gerard, would say, tomorrow our lineup is at 7. And I hear on the other ballroom, the rooms guy say, Scott, well, our lineup is at 6:30. It became a measuring contest. And by the time we got to like 4 o'clock in the morning for our lineup, we said, okay, you guys need to get together. I mean, this is insane, right? We're working 20 hours a day, and we don't care, but now it's a competition. Let's just both start at the same time.
I remember when we did a show at the Fontainebleau. At the Fontainebleau, we did a show called 5 Star Secrets. In Fontainebleau, they have basically their own fishing department. They go out and they fish, and they have an aquarium downstairs, if you call it an aquarium, and they put all the fish in there, and then they had 4 or 5 restaurants, and then the chefs for each restaurant would line up downstairs and first come, first serve.
Wow.
Guess what? They got up pretty early, and you couldn't send anybody else. You had to be an executive chef in one of the restaurants, and you had to show up first come, first serve. And it was very competitive.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, competition is great, man. Somebody just said one of our quotes here, a question, openings are trial by fire.
Oh yeah.
Depends on how you interpret that. I always felt that I want to open the first day perfectly, and there's no exception to perfect, and you will. And I've never opened a hotel or a business, because I've run other businesses, that didn't open up perfectly. But however, as soon as we opened up, I had to back off in a really big way. I had to then get hey, we did it, now go. And just because if you take that stress and that vision and you continue it a week after, 2 months after, 3 months after, with the same velocity, you're going to break everyone. So what I do is I go into the opening day, and I'm like, okay, go. And they're like, where are you going? I'm like, I'll be over here if you need me. But if I keep doing this to you, you will kill me.
Yeah. We pull out opening day. All the trainers, corporate office, everybody leaves, and you hand it over to the local team. When I opened the Ritz-Carlton in Bali, I was responsible for opening a restaurant on the cliff.
Right.
It was basically
that sounds cool.
So beautiful. Open thatched roof restaurant. And we arrived at the restaurant as trainers. There were no tables, no chairs, no china, no glass, no silver. And we just had to improvise. We cut, banana leaves in round shapes. They were the plates. We had bamboo, and those was the knives and the forks, and that's how we trained, and whether you sit on the ground or doesn't matter, you can train. You can open a hotel with excellence.
It's the point. If you have a vision and you're enjoying the people you're around because we're all in the same vision, that becomes fun. It doesn't become a stress. And that's another thing in leadership and management, is when you have a situation that is stressful, if your leader gets, and I have many times when I was younger, I would add to the stress. As I got older, I'd make it a game, make a joke out of it, it's like, again, you're not, it's we're talking about plates here. We're not talking about, being in an emergency room, in the
exactly.
So Hans, let me ask you this before we wrap up today. What was the biggest career success that you had, and what was the biggest career failure that you've had? What have you learned from each of those?
Being on this show is the biggest failure you've had.
I think making a conscious decision to join a company that was known to have tremendous culture, that to me was a life-changing moment. I'd worked in Holland in a Michelin star restaurant where there was no compromise, but it was not really a culture. And the chefs would eat over here, and the front of the house staff would eat over here. You weren't allowed to speak to each other. So that's not really culture, right? And I think that what I've learned, I've taken with me, from company to company, because it's undeniably, a key to success. Culture, eat strategy for breakfast, right? It's everything. And so we built our company, Ithaka, on culture, and we worked really hard on it. We work hard on it every single day, relentlessly, no compromise. Biggest failure, I like to come up with crazy ideas and
Right.
creative things, and some work and some really don't work. I think the biggest thing is that when something doesn't work,
Right.
don't be a stubborn bull and drive it through. Be big enough to admit, hey, this sounded like a really good idea on paper, but it's terrible. We need to abort. We need to pivot. We need to rethink
Right.
that.
So it sounds to me like that Google theory: fail hard, fail quick. If you're going to go ahead and fail with it, because at least you learn from the experience. You can take that knowledge and turn it into something that's going to be more positive, right, Hans?
Fail forward. Absolutely.
Right.
And last week, someone asked me that question. It's like, what was your biggest failure? And I kind of answered it that way. It's like, I don't remember, because I don't see it as a failure. I saw it as not even
learning.
Like, to me, it's like, how can it be a failure if no one's ever done that before? And I was thinking out of the box, or my team was thinking out of the box, and we did something, and maybe it worked somewhere else, but we're literally taking a round hole and putting a square peg, and we're thinking it's going to work because we're better or whatever, and it doesn't. How's that a failure? I think a failure, honestly, is people that haven't. If you can look at yourself and you haven't achieved your goals and your dreams because you didn't put the effort in, that's a failure. If you haven't achieved your goals and your dreams and you've worked really, really hard and you still haven't gotten exactly where you want, that's not a failure. That's just working. But to me, failure is that you had a 5-year plan and you decide to eat Cheerios and not do your job, not go to work, not really work hard. And somebody, I saw a graphic somewhere on one of the social media outlets, and it said, a 9 to 5. You come home, right? You eat dinner, you watch Netflix, and you go to sleep. And that's fine. I did that for a long time. An entrepreneur or a person with a vision that's leading a company wakes up at 4 a.m., goes to sleep at 12 o'clock, and there's really nothing in between except a blackboard with an eraser trying to figure it out. And that, to me, is the difference. So I don't look at, if you've made mistakes or failed, or as long as you're going, man, you can't fall standing still.
Yeah, excellent. Hans, before we wrap up, any final thoughts? How about a good shameless plug for your company?
Well, listen, Ithaka Hospitality Partners, we're focused on independent properties. We believe hotels need to have a soul. We bring the vision of our owners to life, not our brand standards. I think those days are really behind us, where we're forcing owners right out of the gate to do something that they're either not comfortable with or are forced into, basically, because they don't have a choice anymore. We want to collaborate with our owners to create truly unique hotels, restaurants, catering operations that have soul. Where culture is so identifiable, where you walk in and you've entered into a great place. And there's something that we all have seen and done. You walk to a hotel, within literally 3 seconds, whether you have it or not, right?
Listen, even the Westin Hotel, like before Scent was a thing, I can walk into any Westin hotel in the world, and I think there's one in Amsterdam. There is, right? Yeah, I was on that rooftop, and I didn't know what hotel, because me and my daughter were just walking down the street, and we just walked into a hotel because it was a rooftop, and I smelled it. I smelled their scent. I was like, we're in Westin. She goes, "We are?" I said, "Yeah." So we turned. I go, "See, told you." Right. So it's undeniable. And when you build a really strong culture and really a brand, it's undeniable.
Yeah, great. Hans.
Before we let him go, I have one more question.
Of course.
Sure. I remember before. You have an owner that wants to open up a 5-star hotel, but doesn't care about the 5-star rating. They care about just making a culture and making a vision and making their employees and the guests say it's a 5-star hotel. What do you say to that owner?
Well, I think that it falls really into your branding and your marketing strategy. But at the end of the day, it is the owner. And so you can argue the point. You can reason with them, or try to at least. You can get showed.
Do you think it's important to have that 5-star branding? Do you think it's critical? Do you think guests are looking for that 5-star? If you opened a hotel and Horst Schultze and you opened a hotel and everybody heard you guys were running the hotel, are they going there because they heard you guys are running it and it's a great location and it's great comments, or are they going there because somebody slapped a 5-star label on it?
Well, I think it's a combination of the two. I think the validity of the Forbes 5-star is tremendous. The value of that Not so sure about 4, but 5 for sure is undeniably important. It attracts the luxury traveler, the exposure you get in press and press increase. That logo means a lot to people.
I agree.
And also in attracting the best talent. You know, I think you can build a culture all you want, but if you don't start with selecting the right people, you still lose the war. You know, you got to select the right people, bring them to the right culture. And part of that aspiration, part of that goal is, strive for 5. And so I think still today, there's tremendous validity in that.
Yeah, and I agree. But the good news is you can have a really great career, come on a show like this, screw up for just an hour, and still go on to a great career. So you have opportunity.
Right. Well, I'm glad that Hans can, because it's pretty much over for Anthony and myself after we screw up this series. Hans, thank you so much for being here. It was really great and informative.
Thank you, gentlemen.
I love your attitude. Take care. Have a great day. Anthony, another day. What a great show today. I mean, I really love learning from Andy, and I'm feeling very confident that we can really help affect change if we just keep our eyes on the ball.
So let's keep him on the show once a week. Can we do that?
Yeah, we can do anything, assuming he says yes. I'm not going to force him, but he'll say yes because he's such an awesome guy. So I'm not too worried about that. Yeah. Hey, and everybody, it's not too late to check out Hotel Reboot, our first ever attempt at creating a conference that's going to deliver real actionable insights. No pontificating, real stuff that you need in order to improve your business. Check it out at Hotel Reboot. Yeah.
I'm gonna pick up on what you just said. I'm going to use a word, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. Mm-hmm. You said it's our shot at. So I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to ask you a question. Are the numbers picking up for it better than you expected, not as good as you expected, or kind of what you expected?
For the event itself?
Yes.
I didn't know what to expect, honestly, because I've never done anything like this before. I've always shied away from events, right? Because it's just not in my wheelhouse. I love speaking at events. But fortunately, I got a great partner who's created events before. And of course, that's Craig Sullivan, who created California Lodging Investment Conference. So he knows the ropes and how to put together an event. Of course, producer Jeff is going to be running the show, help bring all sorts of new show elements to it. I think it's going all right. I'd love for more people to sign up, of course. But Anthony, I don't know if I'm ever a personality that could ever be satisfied. No matter how many people I'm going to get, I'm going to say, I want 10 more. I want 100 more. I want 1,000 more. So, it doesn't really matter in that sense. I just keep pushing.
If one person shows up to hear me speak, I'm a happy guy.
Yep. Yeah, man. I agree with you on that. I'll tell you, early on with the speaking gigs and stuff, I used to do some like in breakout sessions where I'd have more people on the panel than were actually in the audience for the room. And boy, is that a humbling experience,
Yep, absolutely. And so go to hospitalitysuccess.com.
Yes, of course.
For all your hotel needs, or Hospitality Facebook for your hotel needs. And also, please go to GoFundMe at USA Hospitality Strong. We are going to have another poker tournament. Scal, my partner in this endeavor, is actually upping their game, and they're doing other events as well.
Great.
And I apparently can't stand still without falling backwards. But please go to GoFundMe at Hospitality Strong. And that's it.
All right. I love it, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Hospitality Success, Hospitality Strong, HotelReboot.com. Thanks for all of your support over here. We really appreciate everything. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on, and
thanks for checking in.